Welcome into Out of Bounds alongside with John Luck. I'm Brian Berard. Once again, it's the summer, John, so we kind of take a lot of hiatuses. Not a lot of stuff going on in the sports world, but we will get back and we'll talk about the Red Sox. They are still in first place in the American League East and now have a 2.5-game lead over the Yankees as they picked up another game. They're now 5 games ahead of the Yankees in terms of scheduling. But John, really quickly, these 5 games that the Yankees are back, how important is it going to be for the Yankees to at least get a winning record in these games?
Well, it's going to be very important because you're going to start getting into a situation where the Red Sox have off days, and that's going to be the prime time for the Yankees to try and make some of these games up, try and close the gap a little bit, especially at this point in the season where you have the trade deadline coming up. A winning record is very, very important.
Now, so John, we're talking about, as you mentioned, the trade deadline that is kind of somewhat fast approaching at the end of August here. A lot of people want the Red Sox to go out and get a bullpen arm. They brought up Brazier from Pawtucket, and he started but he got his first look last night, and kid threw some gas. He threw 97, 98 miles an hour. Are the Red Sox bringing him up to be that bullpen arm? Or are they just kind of trying showcasing him to maybe use him as a trade piece?
Well, God, I hope they're bringing him up to showcase him because right now the Red Sox have no farm system, which is where they're kind of screwed, I think, as far as the trade deadline comes here, because you have some players on the trade market that you need and that you can probably get. The only issue is to get those players, you're going to have to give up either some minor league talent, which they don't have, or some players on the current 25 or 40-man roster, which could hurt them in the future. Christian Vasquez is on the DL for 2 months or something like that.
So 6 to 8 weeks.
Most likely catchers where you're going to be looking here. And some of the targets here, Wilson Ramos from Tampa Bay, that's not happening. Most likely he's going to Washington. JT Realmuto from Seattle, that might happen. Jonathan Lucroy from Oakland, Devin Mesoraco from the Mets. The issue the Red Sox have right now, they have nobody that other teams want, or they have players that other teams want, but you're not going to get rid of, like a Benintendi, a Betts, a Devers. You're not going to cut those players loose just for a rental.
Well, to me, if the deal is right, I wouldn't mind seeing Rafael Devers go. I mean, we saw last night again, another error that he's made at third base. And his bat kind of reminds me a little bit about Jackie Bradley. He kind of goes through his peaks and his valleys, but I think Devers is a little bit more consistent. I think he can get out of slumps a little bit better than Jackie Bradley can. Another player that the Red Sox might be showcasing too, you mentioned the catcher position, is Blake Swihart. I know they've kind of put him out in left field and DH and first and everywhere, but I think the Red Sox would be smart if they put him at catcher to showcase him a little bit, to use him as a trade piece. Do you agree?
Yeah, the only issue is with Blake Swihart, you have more of the same as far as the offensive production goes, and that's what a lot of teams are looking at. What can this guy do at the plate? Blake Swihart, the issue with him for a long time was, if he can get playing time, he can go ahead and hit the cover off the ball. He hasn't done that yet, which is what a lot of teams are afraid of. So they're not going to give you a player that you need, or a good player at that, for a contract that might help your team out. For a player like Blake Swihart, you might get a backup catcher from Kansas City or in Anaheim, something like that, but nothing that's going to help your team out in the future here in 2018.
So for the Red Sox, we know that Benintendi is untouchable, Betts untouchable, but for the Red Sox, I know I said I wouldn't mind seeing Devers. Who would you not mind seeing the Red Sox part ways with that many might consider untouchable, or it has to be a really good deal?
To get a really good deal, I wouldn't be surprised to see or hear about Xander Bogaerts on the trade market. He's entering his last year on his contract, I think, next year. So that gives the team another year and a half to try and get a long-term extension. Are the Red Sox invested completely in Xander Bogaerts? I don't know, because then you also have to worry about Manny Machado. So with all this jumbling around at the shortstop position, I think Xander Bogaerts is a player that, for the right deal, that works out great for the Red Sox. That might be a name that may be going.
All right, so another name that has been up in arms or up in the news as of lately is David Price, and he actually had himself a pretty decent streak going against kind of mid-level talent and below, and then the New York Yankees game came along, and we remember the first game he tried to play again, not the first game, but one of the previous games. He had his tingle fingers or his Fortnite or his carpal. Well, no one knows what happened. It was too cold. I don't know what his excuse was.
His tinkle fingers?
Tingle fingers. Davey Tingle Fingers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because, he was losing feeling. It happens, sometimes you hear one thing.
It's one of those shows you don't know where you're going.
But so he kind of backed out of his start against the Yankees, and then it came around again at Yankee Stadium, and John did a very good impersonation of just looking back, and then he went out the next time he pitched against the Royals, and luckily the Red Sox had an absolute butt whooping of an offense that day, and David Price was able to walk away without looking like a tool. But for David Price, what is it that this guy has to do, or what is the team has to do to David Price to get him fixed?
I've told you in the past, and I'll keep telling you again, David Price doesn't care about performing at a Cy Young level. He doesn't care about that. He cares about making the Benjamins. He cares about making money and lining his wallet. He doesn't care about going out there and throwing 8 innings at Yankee Stadium of, 4-hit baseball, giving up an earned run. As long as the check clears, he doesn't give a damn about the Red Sox. He just wants to rack his paycheck up. And as long as he does that, the Red Sox aren't going to get rid of him because he has a player option, I believe, that he is going to most likely cash in on for the remainder of his contract. So you're stuck with this guy for the next, 4 or 5 years? Better get used to this, Red Sox Nation. Congratulations, you got yourself a winner in David Price.
Yeah, he's come out and he said he hasn't thought about whether or not to opt out of his contract at the end of next year. And it would be stupid for him to do that. I mean, you make all this money and you're going to go out there, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you have Rick Porcello is a great pitcher, Chris Sale is a great pitcher, and it's as long as he can somewhat line up his starts against mid-level talent, I mean, that's going to be fine. But we know that David Price can be an elite pitcher. He's won a Cy Young Award before. We know that he's this type of pitcher. And if you're the Red Sox, I know we talked about this about Jackie Bradley earlier in the season, but at what point do you just get rid of him and just throw him in as a trade piece and eat a lot of that contract?
Well, that's where you're going to have a big issue here if you're the Red Sox. You have so much dead money already from some of the bad contracts that you've taken on, the Pablo Sandovals. I think Carl Crawford's still in the Red Sox books for another year or two, but Hanley Ramirez. There's a lot of dead money that a lot of people don't figure out or think about. They think, you know what, just get this player out, he can be somebody else's problem. Well, he is somebody else's problem, but you still had to pay a lot of the base salary for that player. And a player like a David Price, you're going to be paying probably upwards of about $75 million for the rest of the contract just to have another team take care of your problem.
Well, at least it's not a Bobby Bonilla problem like the New York Mets have.
That guy has it made. What is it, like $1.38 million every year until, 2038?
Something like that. I wish I could get that contract. But we'll end our Red Sox talk with that. We'll move on to Major League Baseball's All-Star Game, which is next week. We'll take a look at the rosters. But first, John, we'll focus on the American League roster a little bit more. But Andrew Benintendi is in the final vote along with Giancarlo Stanton for the New York Yankees. Figure those are probably going to be the top 2 vote getters for the final vote. No longer they're going to have the Twitter hashtag vote. You have to actually go online. We've done it, but you have to type in your email address, your birthday, the security code. It's a pain.
I know. You have to type in your email address that they already have, most likely, your birthday. Hopefully you know your birthday.
Well, it's tough.
I mean, it gets kind of weird when you have to do the squiggly security code. I always screw up when you get like an E or a 3.
Yeah, that happens. So, John, every year we talk about the All-Star Game, and every year we talk about the snubs. Who are your snub or a snub from the American League All-Star roster?
I think from the American League, the voting got it right. I think you could make a case for Blake Snell, but the issue when you talk about a snub is who are you going to take off of the roster that's already on here. And the issue that baseball has that I don't think a lot of people think about is the fact that there has to be one representative from each of the teams. So you look at the pitchers here. You have a pitcher from Minnesota, a pitcher from Toronto, Detroit, Oakland. There's a lot of teams that only have one representative to the All-Star Game, and those are pitchers. So you can't take a player off just to put Blake Snell from the Tampa Bay Rays on because you already have Wilson Ramos, the catcher for the Tampa Bay Rays, already on there. But besides that, this is a murderer's row as far as a pitching staff and the starting lineup. And even the reserves, nothing to scoff at either. I think the American League is going to be doing some mopping up of the National League in D.C.
Well, there is one player that you can take off the roster. That's Justin Verlander because that's already come out that he's not going to be there.
They're going to take a guy from Cleveland, I think.
Yeah, well, that's where you could put Blake Snell. Because to me, when you said that name, that was the only name I can think of that's a snub. I mean, he's top 5 in American League in pitching in many categories. I know he plays in a crap box of a team, the Tampa Bay Rays, who are finally above 500 this year. But I think that Blake Snell should have been on the All-Star game or on the All-Star roster. And finally this year, the All-Star game does not determine home field advantage in the World Series. I think that was a stupid idea. Do you like the agreement? Do you like the idea that they finally went back to the old way?
I do, because it's supposed to be a fun game. The players' approach as a fun game. It was weird seeing these random pitching, batting matchups in an All-Star game to try and figure out home field advantage that you have to remember, oh yeah, the All-Star game happened, 5 months ago. You know what? I just want to have 1 week, one night where you just watch a baseball game. You see, Mitch Moreland come in, throw an inning here. In a setting like this where the games don't count, you can have a fun night at the ballpark. Even if it's a tied game, I think people are going to enjoy it. I don't think it'll reflect in the TV ratings because it's baseball and they're hurting for ratings in the summertime. But I think as far as the total experience goes, I think this is a great move for baseball.
I think so too. I mean, remember when Stephen Wright made the All-Star game? It would have been awesome to see him pitch against the National League players that haven't seen a knuckleball, but that's back when it meant home field advantage in the World Series. And if a knuckleball kind of got away from Stephen Wright and a run scored on that wild pitch, all of a sudden, the National League has home field advantage because of that pitch. But I love the idea. We'll move on to the National League side. Do you think that there was a snub on the National League roster?
At first glance, there really isn't. I think the National League is still kind of redeveloped here. I think it's something ridiculous. Like the American League's won the past 18 of the last 22 All-Star games.
Yeah, something like that.
So I think this is just a period where the NL is going through a downstretch, but there's still a lot of great names on here. More likely than not, Max Scherzer is going to be your starting pitcher for the National League, but pitchers like Jacob deGrom, Patrick Corbin from the Arizona Diamondbacks, you still have John Lester as well. I think the pitching staff for the National League is going to be the thing that keeps them in this game. But overall, I think American and National League, the voting got it right.
Yeah, I was kind of a little surprised that Matt Carpenter is one of the last votes to get in there. But other than that, I think I agree with you, John. I think the National League is... There really was no surprises in the National League. You knew your Bryce Harper was going to be there, and you knew that Max Scherzer was going to be there. You're not going to sit there and go, oh, wow, how did this guy make it? And this year, of course, it's in Nationals Park where Washington Nationals play, and there's a DH now. I think that's a good move that baseball finally made, making, you don't have to use a pinch hitter now in a National League Park because you kind of lose a pitcher's appearance if it sets up that right way.
To do that for the rest of the season too, just saying, have a DH in the National League ballparks. But that's another question for another time.
Yeah, that's another topic for another time. So we'll wrap up our baseball talk with that on the other side of the break. We're going to continue talking about our sports, and we're going to talk a little bit of soccer. I know that's kind of odd that we do that here on Out of Bounds, but go anywhere. Got some soccer talk right after this.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones
Don't even.
and explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
Welcome back to Out of Bounds alongside with John Luck. I'm Brian Berard. We talked about some baseball. Now, of course, John, it's the summer. Sports slow down.
Summer League basketball.
Summer League basketball, Cape Cod League baseball, whatever. But you got to fill the show somehow. We're going to fill it with this next topic. Outside of the Super Bowl, World Series, NBA Championship, Stanley Cup, outside of those major events, what is your favorite event outside of those four to watch on television? Or to even be there?
So I think to watch on television, you probably have to go with the Olympics because I think it's a 3-week stretch in the middle of August where there's literally nothing on except baseball. You turn on your TV and there's more likely than not a live event on. And I think it's one of those rare occasions where you don't really root for a team, but you root for your country, and you also get introduced to a sport that takes on a new life. You look at the Winter Olympics, you have curling that's popular for 2 months after the Olympics. In the summertime, you have some of the lesser populated sports. I mean, you have your basketball, but you also have your fencing, your table tennis, your regular tennis. But I think as far as a popular event, I'd probably go with the Summer Olympics.
That's a good call. I mean, I do like the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics and all that stuff, but the only thing I have about them is they're every other year. I'd like to see something a little bit more consistent. For me, I'd have to say it's a toss-up between the U.S. Open and the Masters. Especially watching a Sunday at the Masters every single year, it's a tradition in a lot of households to watch the Masters. And A lot of times it does take around roughly the same time around Easter-ish, but I think that watching the Sunday at the Masters is the first major of the year for golf. But I understand why people don't like to watch golf. I mean, to me, I watch a half hour of it and I get, I just want to go out there and play it, or I'm bored to tears. But I mean, another event that then we're seeing take place right now is the World Cup. The only problem with that is it happens every 4 years. I mean, it's at least the Olympics are every other year, and it's different varieties of it. But for soccer fans, you have the World Cup, and then you have the Confederations Cup, you have the Women's World Cup, and then you have the CONCACAF Championships and UEFA. I mean, there's stuff to watch for if you're a soccer fan. But for me, I'm a golf guy. I love watching golf. For me, it's the Sunday at the Masters of the U.S. Open.
A sneaky popular one is Wimbledon, especially this time of the year in the middle of July. You wake up in the morning, you get your Cheerios, you go ahead, turn on the TV, you got something like 10 hours of tennis taking place. And honestly, we were actually watching some of the Wimbledon for a couple hours yesterday.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just so back and forth, and I know you all make fun of the grunts that they all make. And
I mean, you were analyzing each and every grunt. It kind of got a little
Well,
weird.
the thing to me is I'm watching the radar gun in the back, and just they're serving the thing at 130 miles an hour, and they're returning it like it's nothing. I would run away crying if that thing came at me at 130 miles an hour. I don't know about you.
I'd hit it back. Come on.
But the thing with me is, like, I'm a baseball player, and it's my tendency to take the two-handed swing approach and try to hit it out of the. I know you're trying to get it over that little net, but not out of the back caging.
Forearm, that's all.
Yeah,
Forehand, that's it.
Yeah, that's all right. So we'll wrap up that topic, and we're going to move on to John, favorite sport. I know you are so involved in this. We're going to talk a little bit about the World Cup. Now, we're not going to talk about previewing and reviewing everything, but so the 4 remaining teams in the World Cup are all European teams: England, France, Belgium, and Croatia. But I mean, there's so much drama in this tournament. Russia had made a good run. Germany was eliminated in group stage. Spain was eliminated by Russia. There was no Italy in this tournament, no Netherlands, and no United States. We've seen the crowd reactions from England after their goals and after their wins, but how big of this is that the United States isn't in this tournament? How big is it for U.S. soccer that they missed out?
Well, I think it's an eye-opener. I think the interesting thing is the fact that you had that joint bid for the 2026 World Cup, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. I think 2026, getting that World Cup is an eye-opener for the United States, because now they realize they have, 8 years to try and get something together, try and get a team together that can make a true bid at the World Cup. In my eyes, over the next 8 years, this soccer team here for the United States, it's pretty much go time here as far as the popularity of the game. If they go ahead and they host the World Cup and they get bounced in the group stage, I think the popularity of soccer in America is going to take a deep nosedive. But overseas, you see what's happening right now in the World Cup, and some people in America want to be fans of soccer. It's just they have no team to root for in America.
Well, you do have Major League Soccer. It actually had, I think it's top 10 in international soccer in terms of attendance, not level of play, but in terms of attendance. But you brought up United 2026 is the World Cup and hosted in Canada, United States, and Mexico. That's actually a big World Cup for Canada because, as you probably know, that if you host the World Cup, you're automatically qualified for that World Cup. And the last time that the Canadian men's national team made it to the World Cup was something like 1986. So that's going to be huge for Canada. And of course, Mexico, they're that team that they're great. You always hear about them, but they're always one step behind. Now, in the last World Cup, they lost to a controversial call in the Netherlands in the penalty area, but that's 4 years ago, and we won't talk about that one. But the Red Sox, well, the United States have another 4 years before the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, however you pronounce it. And of course, that World Cup is already riddled with controversy, whether or not they got it fairly, and all the stadiums that are being built, and all the employees and the workers that are tragically dying from building these stadiums. And the thing about this World Cup is it normally takes place in the summer, but it's actually going to take place in their winter because of the extreme heat and humidity that they have over there. But the United States, I know that it's not going to be great conditions over there, but they have to, absolutely 100% have to qualify for that World Cup, because if they don't, soccer is really going to take a big hit in the United States. It doesn't matter if you have MLS or not.
Right. This is kind of the baseline for U.S. soccer right now. For 2022, the important thing is to qualify, like you said, because it kind of gives you a leaping stone, I think. If you can go ahead and somehow, some way get to the knockout stages, the round of 16, that would be crucial for the United States of America, because then in 2026, you're going to have maybe a couple players still left from the 2022 team at that time that maybe had that sour taste in the mouth, and that's going to push them to go even further. If I remember right, I think it was not the last World Cup, but the one before when Landon Donovan had that goal in stoppage time and you had goal USA. That was pretty exciting as an American watching that game, especially in the afternoon. It's a great way to blow off an afternoon in the summertime.
Naturally.
But watching the entire country just celebrate because of one kick, it was pretty fun to watch, and it would be pretty cool to see it again.
You hit the nail right on the head there, John. I mean, I lost my words, but I mean, that's absolutely imperative for the United States to do well. And I think a lot of U.S. soccer fans that really truly follow the team were getting a little annoyed that the U.S. were kind of relying on their older players like Dempsey and Bradley and Howard. They were relying on those older players. And then the United States, before this World Cup, played a friendly with France, and they used their younger players. Christian Pulisic is the next name in U.S. soccer. He doesn't play in the MLS. He plays in Germany, I believe. And, these younger players actually tied France, a World Cup team that is now in the Final Four, and the younger kids, who really no one's heard of, drew them. I think it was a 1-1 tie with France, and you're sitting there going, whoa, all right, these young kids can play. If the U.S. soccer relies on these younger kids and they push them forward, there's going to be learning curves naturally. And I'm not saying that they're going to win the World Cup, but if you kind of progress these players and you teach these players and you kind of get these Americans behind the younger players, I think soccer is really going to start to rise in the United States. I mean, I went to the Revolution game a couple weekends ago, and they were playing DC United. The Revs won 3-2, I think, in that game. And granted, there was 5 goals. I know a lot of people like to watch goals, but we've seen games where the next weekend they played the Seattle Sounders. It was 0-0. There was no goals. And I feel like if you're a fan of sports, you go out there and you go, I watched 90-plus minutes of a sport, and nothing happened. They just ran back and forth, and nothing happened. So I think it's going to take time to adapt to it and kind of get used to it. But we see the MLS attendance go through the roof when the World Cup is on, because that's all you're seeing. And then you come back out here and you go, it's kind of like when the NHL players are playing in the Olympics. Mm-hmm. You're watching amazing hockey, and then you come back and watch the NHL, and it's kind of a little bit of a letdown. But
because it's all the older players from the Champions League or from the Premier League coming in and playing the back nine of their career for Portland or Seattle or LA.
Yeah, but the thing with me is, I think American soccer fans, I think a lot of them are also fans of international soccer. They love Cristiano Ronaldo, Leo Messi, and Mohamed Salah. They love these big-name international players, but it'd be nice to finally get an American on the map, and hopefully that's what we have with Christian Pulisic.
Like I said, sometime in the next 4 years, U.S. soccer is going to have to click if they want to get this game to be one of the top 4 sports in America.
All right, well, we're going to wrap up our soccer talk with that on the other side of the break. We'll have our final thoughts. Don't go anywhere. More Out of Bounds right after this.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. And move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
Welcome back into Out of Bounds, and it's time for our final thoughts. John?
So, NBA free agency started last week or a couple weeks ago, and it was built around LeBron James going to LA, which he did. But then DeMarcus Cousins signed a 1-year, $5.3 million deal, and Twitter broke, Facebook broke, I think the internet broke for some reason, because a lot of people were angry that Golden State just continues to soak up all these superstars. Well, the teams you can thank for that are the other 29 teams in the NBA. Back in 2016, the NBA signed a massive TV deal that ballooned all the payrolls to ridiculous amounts of money. So players like Evan Turner, Jan Mahimi got contracts that they didn't deserve. The reason for that is because there's a salary cap base floor. So teams had to go ahead and give stupid contracts like they could have given me $20 million a year to meet that minimum. The Players Association and the owners also came up with this term called the Supermax. So if you have your own developed superstar, Russell Westbrook, John Wall, you can offer them stupid amounts of money as well. The LA Lakers and the Golden State Warriors are starting to develop the right idea here. Get your superstar or superstars, build a team around that with a bunch of one-year deals. Your DeMarcus Cousins, Kentavious Caldwell-Popes, Rajon Rondo. A lot of these players now are signing on for one-year deals or 1 year in a player option. The reason they're doing that now is they get their $31 million guaranteed and they can go ahead and explore. In my eyes, the salary cap situation and what the Warriors are doing now, get used to it because that's the future of NBA, I think. And it's going to be pretty fun to watch because now you have 2 seasons. You have the regular season, well, the basketball season, if you want to call it that, and you have the off season, which, as a basketball fan, I'm intrigued.
Now, didn't the Celtics have to do that a couple years ago with Courtney Lee? They had to reach the salary floor, and they offered him a stupid amount of money just to get there.
And I think Chris Humphries, too. I think that was before the salary cap blew up. But, yeah, there's some bad contracts the Celtics had to sign.
All right, well, my final thought, I'm actually going to stick with basketball, and I'm going to go with Gordon Hayward. He just released a video the other day of him and his wife and his girls doing another gender reveal for their baby, and Gordon looks a little less than impressed to have yet another daughter. I'm sure he's thrilled to death to have another kid, but yeah, I had to wonder, it was a little bit dejected when he saw the pink balloons and not the blue balloons. It's, oh man, another daughter, what's going on here? But, I'm glad that the guy had another kid. I mean, he had his broken foot. I mean, one thing led to another. We'll just leave it at that. But that was just kind of a funny reaction where he just sees the pink balloons and he goes, "Ah, man."
You can almost feel the story.
Yeah, it's like, I was kind of expecting a boy, but he got another girl. But congratulations to Gordon Hayward. But still kind of a funny moment. We just,
oh, nuts.
Literally, the air fell out of the balloon. But so for John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. Thanks for watching Out of Bounds. But don't forget, one last thing. Our next episode, once again, John, we always mention, it's the summer, it slows down a little bit. We're going to have our inaugural Ubi Awards. We're going to be giving out fantastic
Do I
awards.
have to dress up for this, Brian?
Oh, and we might have to dress up in tuxedo t-shirts.
You know what, Brian? Time to suit up.
Suit up. Yeah, we're going to give away rewards for Best NBA Player, Best Major League Baseball team. We're going to give away some cool awards. Do you want to check that out next week? It's our Ubis. We're going to film them on July 17th. Should be coming out a little bit after that. So once again, for John Luck, I'm Brian Berard. Thanks for watching Out of Bounds.